In the scorching heat of West Africa, 35-year-old military captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader, just did the unthinkable. He stood face-to-face with the economic might of China and said no. The offer? $40 billion. Infrastructure, development, progress, all that glittering promise, met with rejection that sent shockwaves through Beijing's corridors of power. While other nations scramble for China's checkbook, one African leader dared to demand something more valuable than money: respect. This isn't just diplomacy, it's a declaration. And the world is watching as David stands before Goliath with nothing but truth as his sling. This is the story Beijing doesn't want told. The partnership they never expected, and the young African president whose courage may just rewrite the rules of global power. Subscribe now to follow every untold story of President Traoré's fearless journey. The September heat hung heavy over Ouagadougou as Captain Ibrahim Traoré reviewed intelligence reports in his Spartan office. Since taking power, the 35-year-old military leader had inherited a nation bleeding from all sides. Jihadist violence in the north, crushing poverty throughout, and foreign powers circling like vultures over Burkina Faso's vast mineral wealth. While his people struggled for daily survival, Traoré knew the true battle was being fought in boardrooms and diplomatic chambers. His country, sitting on Africa's fourth-largest gold reserves, massive manganese deposits, and critical rare earth elements, had become the latest prize in a new scramble for Africa. For years, Beijing had methodically expanded its influence across the continent. $300 billion invested, 3,000 infrastructure projects, millions of jobs created. But beneath the ribbon cuttings and handshakes lay a pattern: resources flowing out, debt flowing in. In Zimbabwe, in Zambia, in Angola, the story repeated. Chinese loans became Chinese ownership when payments faltered. Ports, railways, even entire mining operations transferred to Beijing's control. Back at Traoré's office, his aide Lieutenant Konate enters urgently and tells him, "Captain, they're here. The Chinese delegation has arrived 2 hours early." Traoré looks up, expression hardening as he rises from his desk, and responds, "How convenient. They wish to catch us unprepared." What the Chinese officials didn't know was that Traoré had spent weeks studying their playbook. He had personally called leaders across Africa, examined failed contracts, consulted economists who had seen the debt-trap diplomacy unfold elsewhere. The young captain had prepared for this moment since childhood. Raised on stories of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's revolutionary hero who had declared independence from foreign control before his assassination, Traoré had vowed never to sell his country's birthright. As Traoré walks purposefully down a long corridor to the conference room for the meeting, Lieutenant Konate, one of his aides, said to him, "Sir, the finance minister recommends we consider their offer. The infrastructure package could transform our economy overnight." Traoré pauses, looking his lieutenant directly in the eyes, and responds, "At what cost, Konate? Our children's future? Our sovereignty? Our dignity?" Behind the massive wooden doors of the conference room waited China's most skilled negotiators, armed with contracts, projections, promises, and a $40 billion checkbook designed to overwhelm a desperate nation. What they couldn't possibly have anticipated was that Captain Ibrahim Traoré had come with something far more powerful than money. He had come with a vision of true African independence and the courage to demand it. The meeting began with the choreographed precision Beijing had perfected across continents. Pleasantries, tea, symbolic gifts, a silk scroll depicting African and Chinese hands clasped in friendship. The Chinese delegation leader was Vice Minister Zhao Wei, and he began, "Captain Traoré, President Xi Jinping sends his highest regards. He believes Burkina Faso and China share a special destiny, both proud nations that have overcome colonial oppression." Traoré nods politely. What followed was a masterclass in economic seduction. A digital presentation illuminated the darkened room, projecting visions of a transformed Burkina Faso. The projection shows before/after renderings of gleaming highways replacing dusty roads, modern apartment blocks rising where shanties stood, industrial parks buzzing with activity. Vice Minister Zhao points to the projection and says the president, "This could be Ouagadougou in just 5 years, Captain." China's Belt and Road Initiative has achieved such miracles across Asia and Africa. Now, we extend this opportunity to your people. The Chinese delegation had done their homework. They knew exactly where to press and what to promise. Vice Minister Zhao continues, "We understand security remains your primary concern. Our engineers can construct military facilities, supply advanced surveillance systems. Terrorist safe havens will vanish." Burkina Faso's defense minister leans forward, interest piqued. He asks, "And the timeline for deployment?" Vice Minister Zhao responds, "The first equipment would arrive within 60 days of signing." The projection changes to show massive mining operations, and then came the centerpiece, a $40 billion infrastructure package. Railways connecting every major city. Solar farms to end energy shortages. Hospitals, schools, irrigation systems. Vice Minister Zhao slides an elegant leather portfolio across the table and says to Captain Traore, "The complete offer is detailed here. 40 billion in infrastructure development, loans at preferential rates, technical expertise, military equipment. All we ask in return is priority access to mineral resources and streamlined approval for Chinese operations." Traore opens the portfolio, revealing the complex contract. Buried in the fine print were the true costs. 99-year leases on strategic mines. Exclusive rights to process all extracted materials in Chinese facilities. Permission to bring in Chinese workers for specialized roles. And a clause requiring all disputes be settled in Beijing courts. Traore's finance minister whispers urgently in his ear, "Captain, this could quadruple our GDP in a decade. The poverty reduction alone." Traore holds up a hand, silencing him. He slowly rises, walking to the window overlooking the city. Then he speaks. "And the repayment terms, Vice Minister Zhao, if we were to fall behind on these preferential loans?" Vice Minister Zhao responds, "A mere formality. We've included standard collateral arrangements. In the unlikely event of payment difficulties, China would temporarily assume operational control of the pledged assets until accounts are settled." Traore turns back toward the table, his gaze landing on a small photograph on the wall. Thomas Sankara standing proud and defiant. In that moment, as Traore stared at his hero's image, the full weight of the decision pressed upon him. History had seen this before. Promises of prosperity that became chains of dependency. Traore returns to his seat, his expression now resolved. "I thank you for this generous offer, Vice Minister. But before we proceed further, I would like to share a different vision, one that might better serve both our nations. Let us reconvene tomorrow for further deliberations." The Chinese delegation exchanges subtle glances, confusion evident. While the Chinese delegation returned to their hotel, Captain Traore gathered his inner circle and told them, "I need your honest assessments. No diplomatic language. No politics. Just the truth." Minister of Mines, Ouagadougou was the first to respond. "The Chinese have done their research, Captain. Their proposal targets our largest manganese reserves in the southwest, gold deposits near Kaya, and, most crucially, our undeveloped lithium fields. Conservative estimates value these lithium deposits at $28 billion. Essential for batteries, electronics, the future. China controls 80% of global lithium processing. They're not just buying our rocks. They're securing their global dominance." Defense Minister Kabor chips in. "The security package is substantial. Drone systems, armored vehicles, training for 12 specialized battalions. Technology we desperately need. With this equipment, we could reclaim these territories within 8 months. Thousands of displaced families could return home." Lieutenant Kone, Traore trusted aide, interjects, But every piece of that equipment requires Chinese technicians to operate and maintain it. Their personnel would have unrestricted access to our security apparatus. Finance Minister Sowadogo spreads out the loan documents, circles of coffee stains on the pages. The terms appear generous on the surface. 1.5% interest over 30 years. Grace period of 5 years. But the collateral clauses, if we miss 2 consecutive payments, they gain operating rights to all infrastructure projects and mines for 99 years. Effectively, permanent transfer of our most valuable assets. Foreign Affairs Minister Diallo adds, we should consider the regional implications. I've spoken with my counterparts in Mali and Niger. Both received similar offers last month. Both are deliberating. But Djibouti serves as a warning. They defaulted on Chinese loans in 2017. Now, Beijing operates their main port, the lifeblood of their economy. Traore rises, walking to a worn map of colonial-era French West Africa hanging on the wall. As time passed, the debate intensified. Economic necessity wrestled with sovereignty. Present hardships against future freedom. The door opens as Aminata Sankara, a young economist and niece of Thomas Sankara, enters with a thick folder. Forgive my lateness, Captain. I've been analyzing the fine print. She projects data onto the screen. Graphs showing African nations' GDP growth versus resource depletion. I've compiled data from 17 African nations that accepted similar Chinese investments over the past decade. Initial GDP growth averages 8.6% in the first 3 years. But by year 7, the pattern emerges. Resource extraction outpaces economic benefits by a factor of 3. Local job creation peaks at 31% of promises, then declines as Chinese workers replace locals in skilled positions. She swipes to a new slide showing sovereignty metrics. Most critically, nations that accepted these deals experienced what economists call decision sovereignty decline, gradually losing control over their economic and eventually political choices. Silence falls over the room. Traore walks to the window, gazing at his capital city. He speaks. My uncle once said, "He who feeds you controls you." We've been here before. Different faces, different flags, same intention, to extract what is precious and leave us hollow. He turns back to the room, his decision forming. Lieutenant Konat chips in. Captain, if we reject this offer, what alternative do we have? Our people need schools, hospitals, roads. Now, not in some theoretical future. Traore eyes light up with sudden inspiration. Perhaps there's a third path. Neither acceptance nor rejection, but transformation. He moves to the table, pulling a blank sheet of paper. What if we counter with our own proposal? One that honors both our needs and our dignity. Excitement stirs around the table as Traore begins to sketch his vision. A new strategy emerged, radical, unprecedented, and potentially revolutionary for all of Africa. 51% ownership remains with Burkina Faso. Processing facilities built in country. Technology transfer mandatory. African consortium investment option. The question remained, how would Beijing respond to a playbook they hadn't written? The morning arrived with the weight of history. The Chinese delegation sits on one side of the table, looking confident. Vice Minister Zhao reviews documents while aides whisper updates from Beijing. The door opens as Traore enters with his team, all showing signs of a sleepless night, but carrying themselves with newfound resolve. For decades, the script had remained unchanged. Wealthy nations propose, African leaders accept. But Captain Ibrahim Traoré had spent the night writing a different ending. Traoré takes his seat as attendants serve tea. The atmosphere is tense but cordial. Vice Minister Zhao begins. Captain Traoré, we trust you've had time to review our generous proposal. President Xi Jinping himself has expressed personal interest in this partnership. Traore responds, we have indeed reviewed it thoroughly, Vice Minister. Burkina Faso appreciates China's interest in our development. However, we believe true partnership must benefit both nations equally. Therefore, We propose an alternative framework. Lieutenant Konate distributes folders to the Chinese delegation. Vice Minister Zhao opens his with controlled curiosity. What followed was unprecedented in China-Africa relations, a complete reversal of the power dynamic that had defined such negotiations for generations. Traore continues. Our counterproposal maintains the spirit of cooperation while ensuring it truly serves both our peoples. First, all mineral extraction operations will be joint ventures with 51% Burkinabe ownership. Second, processing facilities must be built here in Burkina Faso, creating thousands of skilled jobs for our youth. Third, a mandatory technology transfer program with our universities. Fourth, environmental standards exceeding international requirements. And finally, all dispute resolution will occur through neutral international arbitration, not Chinese courts. Vice Minister Zhao's expression remains diplomatic, but his knuckles whiten as he grips his pen. Forcing a smile, he responds, "Captain, while your creativity is admirable, this deviates significantly from our standard framework. Such terms would be unprecedented." Traore responds, "Precisely, Vice Minister. The old frameworks have failed Africa. It's time for something unprecedented." Traore activates a screen showing infrastructure projects across Africa. China has built magnificent roads across our continent. Yet these roads primarily connect mines to ports, extracting wealth rather than connecting communities. We propose roads that serve our people first, resources second. The Chinese delegation confers urgently in whispered Mandarin. Beijing will never approve this. Should we terminate discussions? Vice Minister Zhao tells them, "No, maintain protocol. I must consult with President Xi immediately." Vice Minister Zhak turns to the president. "Captain Traore, your proposal requires consultation with Beijing. Perhaps we should reconvene tomorrow after." Traore interrupts politely but firmly. "Of course. But understand, Vice Minister, these terms are non-negotiable. Burkina Faso is open for partnership, not possession. We welcome China's friendship and respect your achievements. But Africa's future will be written by Africans." The Chinese delegation exits with rigid politeness. Once outside, Vice Minister Zhao barks urgent orders to aides. "Secure the satellite link immediately. The president must hear of this personally." Vice Minister Zhao puts a call across and summarizes Traore's counterproposal to President Xi. Xi Jinping responds, "This military captain believes he can dictate terms to China?" Vice Minister Zhao answers, "He appears to have studied our previous agreements with other African nations extensively. His counterproposal directly addresses what he calls imbalances in those arrangements. Intelligence suggests he consulted with Mali and Niger before a meeting. Both are considering similar positions. Our sources indicate France and America are observing but not directly involved. Xi's finger traces the mineral-rich corridor across the Sahel." Xi Jinping then turns to his economic advisor, who has been listening silently. "If this spreads, if other African leaders follow, the Belt and Road Initiative in Africa would require complete recalibration. The lithium deposits. How essential are they to our supply chain?" The economic advisor tells him, "Critical, Mr. President. Burkina Faso's reserves could supply 18% of our projected needs over the next decade. Without them, our battery production targets for 2030 would be compromised." Xi Jinping tells the Vice Minister Zhao to neither accept nor reject. Request a 1-week pause for consultation. "We need time to assess all options." He turns to his strategic advisor. Draft 3 scenarios. First, accept their terms with minor modifications. Assess impact on other African partnerships. Second, withdraw completely. Calculate economic and strategic losses. Third, his expression hardens. Explore pressure points. Economic, political, security. Every nation has weaknesses. Find Burkina Faso's. The new decision is communicated to Lieutenant Konate, who approaches Traore to inform him of the decision. "Captain, the Chinese have requested a 1-week pause. Intelligence reports intense activity at their embassy. Traore nods. So it begins. Do you think they'll accept our terms? Lieutenant Conad asks. Traore turns, his expression resolute but realistic. They may not. But either way, we've already won something precious. We've shown our people and the world that Africa can write its own rules again. As word spread of Burkina Faso's unprecedented stance, the global community erupted in debate. Western analysts initially dismissed it as diplomatic suicide, a nation of 21 million daring to challenge the world's manufacturing superpower. Captain Traoré's counterproposal was hailed across the continent as the Ouagadougou Framework, a potential new model for resource sovereignty. Diplomats from 12 African nations requested copies of the proposal. In China, state media downplayed the confrontation, framing it as ongoing productive discussions. But behind closed doors, strategists scrambled to assess the threat to their African investment model. 7 days after Traoré's counterproposal, Beijing responded, not with acceptance, not with rejection, but with an unprecedented third option, a modified agreement incorporating 60% of Burkina Faso's demands, including the crucial 51% ownership requirement. For the first time, the script had changed. David hadn't merely confronted Goliath. He had changed how Goliath does business. While diplomats and analysts debated geopolitical implications, in the villages and towns of Burkina Faso, something more profound was taking root: hope. The revised agreement includes processing facilities to be built near Kaya, creating an estimated 4,000 jobs for local workers. In the months that followed, the Ouagadougou Framework has spread across African nations, each adapting it to their circumstances, but preserving its core principle: partnership without surrender. The true test would come in implementation, in the daily struggle to transform words into reality. But something fundamental had shifted. A new generation of African leaders had witnessed something powerful: the possibility of change. Captain Ibrahim Traoré's stand was neither the beginning nor the end of Africa's centuries-long struggle for true independence. But it represents something powerful, a reminder that the pen that writes global rules can change hands. In a world where economic might often dictates diplomatic outcomes, Burkina Faso proved that courage can sometimes rewrite the rules. One nation's refusal became a template for many. One leader's stand became a people's hope. If this story of sovereignty and courage moved you, subscribe now to follow more untold narratives from across our changing world. Like and share to spread the message that true partnership requires respect, not dependence. Remember, even the smallest nations can write the largest chapters in history's book. All it takes is the courage to pick up the pen.